Celebration wraps up today with a custom bike show. George Zimmerman may be a free man, but his lawyers say that their dealings with the state of Florida are far from over. Zimmerman was acquitted in July of all charges relating to that February 2012 shooting of Trayvon Martin. Of course, he died. Well, now his defense attorney, Mark O'Mara, says that Florida should pay for all of Zimmerman's legal costs because he was found not guilty. HLN legal contributor Joey Jackson and criminal defense attorney Tanya Miller are here to give their take on this. Joey, let's start with you on here. Tell us about this Florida law about acquittals and court costs. Where does that go?
Sure. Well, there's a statute, and the legislature created this statute, 939.06 of the Florida codes. And basically what it says is that if you're acquitted, you're not responsible for certain costs. Now, these costs are not attorney's fees. The state does not pick up your attorney's fees as a result of acquittal, but any types of other costs that you may incur, deposition fees, expert witnesses, et cetera, that go into a criminal case, then, of course, you can petition the state for the return. They have to be certified by a judge, meaning they have to meet with judge approval, and provided that that happens, it goes before the Judicial Commission, and then you get a check.
All right.
Not that easy. I make it sound simple, but not that simple.
Yeah, and Tanya, what do you think? Does this law make it difficult for him to recoup any expenses?
I can tell you that I'm sure the state is not going to want to fork over. We saw how aggressively they prosecuted George Zimmerman for second-degree murder not too long ago. I'm sure they're going to aggressively seek not to fork over funds to pay for that defense. And it's also interesting. We know that Mr. Zimmerman received a good deal of donations from public entities and public people who wanted to support his defense. And that money, I thought, went to pay for most of the legal fees associated with his defense. So if they recoup these funds, the question for me is, does it go back to the donor? Does it go to Mr. Zimmerman? Who does it go to? So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out.
Yeah, to see where all that money went. And Joey, O'Mara has said that the legal fees for Zimmerman's case was around $2 million. How much do you think the defense might get then, if they do get anything?
That's interesting, Natasha, because that's a separate question, of course, the legal fees. And as a result of that, the state is not responsible for that at all. As to whether George Zimmerman comes up with that independently, as to whether they continue to fundraise, then, of course, that's a separate issue. But it will not come from the taxpayers of Florida. Now, the other twist is, of course, if he had legal aid, that would be paid by the taxpayers of Florida.
Yeah, and George Zimmerman's wife, meanwhile, has been dealing with some trouble of her own. On Wednesday, Shelley Zimmerman pleaded guilty to perjury for lying about the couple's finances. And then in a recent ABC interview, she hinted that her marriage was in jeopardy. Look.
Did you want him to be in court to support you?
I always want my husband's support.
Are you together?
I'm not going to answer that. Of course I want to have children and stay married.
With George?
That's something I'm going to have to think about.
So, Tanya, I mean, you're raising your eyebrows, kind of like, what? You know, what's going on? Do you think the couple's headed towards a breakup? I mean, it certainly looks that way from watching her.
Well, it's really weird. I just found myself wondering, why is she on this show talking about her marriage? I'm not a marriage counselor, so I really don't know if their marriage is headed for a breakup, but I do think that it is really interesting. I mean, she walked into court and pled guilty to perjury, to lying to the court about the amount of money that they had. And frankly, I just think that that played into a good extent to what the prosecution was saying about Mr. Zimmerman, that he was willing to lie to get himself out of trouble.
All right, so Joey Jackson, Tanya Miller, we got to leave it there. Guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure and a privilege. Be well, Natasha. Take care, Tanya.
And you can find out more about the Zimmerman's legal trouble by heading to our website at HLNTV.com.